This is Macro Analytix, delivering frank conversations on global macroeconomics and market analysis, outside the mainstream, featuring discussions and debates between Gordon T. Long, publisher and editor of GordonTLong.com, and his guests. The content of this discussion is strictly the opinion of the participants. It is in no way a solicitation for business, nor is it to be considered investment advice of any sort. Always consult a registered investment advisor before making any investment decision. These discussions are extremely hard-hitting and terribly frank, and parental discretion is advised. Now, on to the show.
Good morning. I'm Gord Long, and I have with me this morning Ty Andros, like old times, who is no stranger to most of our listeners. Ty is the president of TraderView, publisher of the TEDBits website, and writer and editor of his well-recognized newsletter, also named TEDBits. Good morning, Ty, and welcome back to Macro Analytics.
Good morning, Gordon. Thank you for having me.
Ty, we're going to do something a little different here this morning. You know, you do so much writing and have for years, and your articles are always very well researched and frankly very unique perspective compared to what's generally out there in the mainstream. And I thought over the next few sessions, Ty, that we'd review some of your most current articles and what the key messages are that you're delivering in them, what your perspective of the priorities and the major moving events are right now. And I picked your last article. I know you have another one just imminently coming out, but the last one that's out on your site, tedbits.com, if listeners would like to listen to it in its entirety. And you named the article Fake Growth, Economic Collapse, Debt Spirals, Socialists Smelling the End Zone. A really fascinating title, Ty. Do you want to expand on it?
Well, Gord, as you know, we're in a maelstrom, and I have some beliefs that aren't subscribed to by Keynesians, being an Austrian, but Gord, we're in a currency and financial system extinction event, which will also cause societal chaos. And, so many economists don't take into thought human behavior, or really don't give it the proper emphasis in doing their analysis. I believe that we live in, the Matrix. Like the movie, it's a perfect analogy of people sitting in a cocoon being fed illusions and lies, and really being, the elites and the governments are feeding off them like a parasite would, and that the public schools have dumbed down citizens to the point that black is white and white is black, and the meanings are become very blurred. So we're really at a time of what I'm going to say Mother Nature and Darwin applying the lessons that are timeless, and they're going to apply pain until people wake up. And when those people wake up, we're really going to have quite an interesting period. But that we're really at I'll call it in a political exercise where people's freedoms and property and taxes and regulations have gone to the point where societies no longer can grow or produce wealth, but their debt is mushrooming, and it's a type of slavery. They warned about it, the founding fathers, and said, warned us clearly. And of course, they had the lessons of history, and I'm just leaning on the lessons of history. But this episode, Gordon, is not regional. It used to be, these things were done by one part of the globe or another. But now, since we're in a global society, it's far broader. And I would have to say through the G8 and basically the group of 20 that this is an empire that is coming apart at the seams. The people that are steering the boat, the people like Ben Bernanke or Barack Obama or Angela Merkel or Boy in Spain or Barroso and Olli Rehn in the European Commission, these people are all incapable of doing the proper thing to restore prosperity and growth. And it's because they don't believe in capitalism. They're hardcore socialists. They ignore the lessons of history, and to them, it's all a political game, and practicality, or the practical things in life, are really not to be considered. They believe themselves to be gods, and they believe that they can alter the rules of nature and history with a little piece of paper and a gun and a badge. And I don't believe any of those things are true. And reality is going to intrude and keep intruding until people change their behavior. Socialists work very hard to avoid pain. And pain's a really important thing, because what it does is when you have pain, you alter your behavior. And I know that when I've made mistakes and caused myself to have pain, I hopefully didn't repeat those things in the future. But the idea that we can get rid of those signals and make good decisions is wrong. And, a quick example of that is 50% of the people in the United States no longer pay taxes. And so they don't understand the pain of their poor choices that it's inflicting on the people they rely on to create the wealth that they live on. And, we always talk about the rich paying their fair share. Well, the rich pay all the taxes. Let's just say that. The top 10% pay 90% of the taxes. And, they can throw around the big numbers, but as a percentage of income, they're the people that pay. And so we're going to go through societal upheaval until the people, the takers, are thrown off the wagon, and the makers are unharnessed. And so we're really into a tumultuous period, and it's the greatest opportunity in history for investors who study history and devise I'll call it applied Austrian economics necessary to be a victor in the incoming chaos. And it's going to be the death of, people's faith in government. And, they're going to reestablish their ability to be independent and free people rather than be sheeple.
Ty, you make point out some fascinating quotes throughout your article. You said earlier you're a student of history, and some of your quotes are just outstanding. But the one that jumps to me now is your comments you're just making about the people learning in this creeping socialism is the one by Benjamin Franklin, when he said, when the people find that they can vote themselves money, that will herald the end of the republic. And I'm really sensing that in the United States that we're there. I was reading the other day and doing some numbers, and we have 110 million people today, Ty, that are living on welfare, food stamps, and Medicaid. That doesn't include Social Security or Medicare. Then we've got this huge population that's living on that, the retirement. We have 75 million baby boomers about to retire who don't have the means and are terribly nervous about whether Social Security and Medicare is going to be there for them. And then you've got a large government employee population, whether military, police, teachers, direct civil servants, that are all of these people are dependent on government largesse. And when you got that percentage, they're not going to vote for somebody that's saying, well, I'm going to cut and the status quo doesn't work and we've got to make changes. They're going to vote for somebody that's going to deliver the status quo.
Well, I guess I'd go a little bit further than that. And what they're doing is the Bible says thou shalt not steal. But that doesn't apply to somebody that's, I'll call it from a something for nothing society. Thou shalt not steal except for at the end of a government gun. And we really are looking at these people insisting that the government take from the people producing wealth and hand it over to the people consuming it. And now we're at the point where there's so many people on the consumption end, and I call them locusts. because they're going to eat the seed corn, they're going to eat today's production, and they're going to eat future generation production before the lenders say no. And of course, that's the process we're in now.
Ty, you have some outstanding quotes I found very, very bold, and you've kind of been touching on some of them, and they're around socialism in general. I have them up here in front of me. I really would like your comments on the very first one, and tying it together with what you just said, and that is, socialism is the policies of misery spread widely as economic growth becomes a memory. And our listeners can read the rest of it up here. Comments?
Well, that's what it is. It's taking the misery of people that don't produce and moving it to the misery to those that do. By taking from them what they've earned and accumulated. Gord, I'm a small businessman, got 3 employees, been working at it for 25 years. I've really, begun to have some pretty good success because I'm in my mid-50s, but it's a cumulative effort from starting years and years ago. And I didn't steal the money. I worked, I got to think I worked 60 or 70 hours a week for 25 years. And I didn't steal the money from anybody. I took the risks, and I've had my ups and downs. There's other people that, expect to really they're entitled to something. Recent Heritage, Heritage, I forgot what it is, the name of it, but shows that if you're really on the dole between welfare and food stamps and Medicaid, a family of 4 is actually taking down $60,000 a year. Well, that's more than the median income, isn't it, Gord?
Yes, it is.
Why would anybody get off that to go to work?
We have 52 million people who are working full-time or part-time that are making and want to work full-time who are making less than $21,000 a year, and that's the subsistence level. So it says that they're being penalized by working, doesn't it?
Well, Obama is not good at building anything, and neither are the people in Washington, but they are good at building the something for nothing society and government dependence. In fact, they've been better at it than anybody in history. And of course, those are their constituents. Those are the takers. And they're, this election has gotten a lot more, more stake on it now that Paul Ryan's joined the ticket, because they're making a bet that they can educate the people and get them to make the hard choice of not that, working hard and changing the way things are versus the something for nothing, the dole. And I don't believe the American public either has the education to understand the consequences of continuing down the path that we're on, nor do they, desire to change it. It's just like that quote from Ben Franklin you started with.
Ty, I think we've moved from a last election, which was, the word was hope. And I think this election is really, and nobody will use it, but is about fear. And that is all of the people who are afraid of losing these government benefits and support, because they're in a situation where they have no other ways of either work, jobs, future employment, or raising their standard of living for a whole series of reasons. But, you make another quote here on the third one. There simply is not enough wealth being created in the private sector to pay for the squandering of capital by public servants and bureaucrats. Comments on wealth creation and the squandering of capital?
Well, the economic model of the United States was changed back in 1971 when we went to fiat currencies. And, everything that we do now, to me, is squandering. I'll call them the policies of insolvency. And where you mandate benefits that you don't have the money to pay for. Actuarially, they're completely upside down. And, we hear about the GSAs and that sort of thing, but those are just headline stories to pretend to the public that they're looking out after them. Those aren't anecdotes. Those are just those are smoke screens to hide the true depth of the squandering of money by the U.S. government and state and municipal governments. Gord, just think about it. We had a $300 billion deficit when Bush got out of office, and now we have a $1.2 trillion or $1.3 trillion deficit, and of course that doesn't include off-balance sheets theft. And what have we got for it? What have we got? Well, I'll tell you what we got. We moved from government being 19 or 20% of the GDP of the United States to 24%. And then those budgets were put on a baseline that, is a growth of 4 to 6% compounded annually. But the economy is growing 1 or 2%. So mathematically, the government will absorb the private sector over time. It's written into law.
It used to be when we had real growth that when you spent $1, you'd get $2.50, maybe $3 of real growth. Doesn't necessarily mean it would be sustained, but we passed a point here 2 years ago, or actually more than that now, in 2008, where now, today, $1 spent actually will only generate at best 25 to 30 cents, which means this debt will not be paid back and is actually digging ourselves deeper and deeper into a hole. And this is part of this wealth creation. It's just not being created. And the other quote that you were very strong is that if you properly measure growth in the private sector, you said it's been dead for over a decade. You want to expand on that?
The private sector's really not growing, in my estimation, Gord. What's growing is government, and they borrow the money and they call it growth. And that if you stripped out the growth of government, which is compounded annually at 6% plus new spending programs, and you take that out of measuring GDP, you'll see that really all the growth was in the government sector for 10 or 15 years. The private sector is virtually unchanged.
Ty, we actually did a whole series here on the fallacies of GDP, and I encourage our listeners to go back and review the 3-part series to just the magnitude of flaws in it. But the degree to which we've taken this mistaken belief in growth is staggering, because as you just said, you take out government spending, but the government spending
called growth,
which is called growth, or it's called wealth if you consider GDP to be wealth creation, and it is not. But every dollar that's spent by the government is spent, for example, for student loan financing, for car loans, etc. So it ends up being double counted and comes back as consumption. And we're a 70% consumption economy. It's the big C in the GDP, so it's double accounted. But Ty, it's worse than that. Because then the money is, there's a big court case here against General Motors, because of the loans that are going through GMAC. And what they've been doing is channel stuffing. And it is broad-based. So therefore, exports have also been inflated, that have been going out because of specifically into Europe and across border, but right across the board, never mind student loans and the degree that it's there. So the formula is so flawed. And if you were to accept this ridiculous, bogus formula, then we put it into real terms and use the CPI. And as you've shown, and we have up here now this chart from John Williams, if you use just a realistic CPI and accept the formula, it shows negative growth, as you're saying. So it's not even unquestionable now that we've had negative growth for, as you say, 15 years.
Well, if you look at that John Williams chart, actually, it goes back to 1990. You really don't see much green after that, and it definitely is a trend, and it's a trend downwards. And we really have got to the point where, just think of that. That's people's living, shrinking at a compounded annual rate. And that's why there's no middle class. The middle class is dead. They just recently said that they've lost 40% of their nominal wealth since 2007. But it's much worse than that, because if you properly put in the inflation statistics, the middle class has really been under assault now for well over 20 years. And that's why everybody's desperate. They're living in poverty. Their paychecks stay the same, but every year it buys less and less. And of course, that's one of the illusions of unsound money, which we're in right now. I mean, you have to understand, in 1971, the basic premise of the economy went from the production of wealth to the consumption of it. And as an economic model, that is just doomed to failure, because it's consumption of wealth and they borrow the money. You talked about student loans there, Gord. Well, let's really examine that. The government wants to be in control, and anybody knows about being a debt slave. But the amount of student loans outstanding when Obama took the presidency was about $250 billion, and now it's well over $1 trillion. And the government, where you can discharge debts in bankruptcy, if you owe money to the government, that is a dream. Okay, so those people have literally been shackled to the government, and they called that $750 billion economic growth, even though it's a debt creation, and the money that they were paid or used for their college educations was printed out of thin air. And then they did a real imitation of subprime lending, where they really didn't examine what type of degrees you're going to get. Are the degrees you're going to get going to be allow you to pay this off within some kind of a regular period of time? The people that didn't finish the school still owe the debt, but the debt on a compounded annual basis, really the upside from the degree, is transferred from the individual to the government because of compounding. It's a crime against the young people of America.
Not only have we got it, Ty, as you clearly point out, the middle class in America, but there was a feature article just recently in the Wall Street Journal, and it's got to be obvious when the Wall Street Journal writes about it, to be frank. But their whole article was featured on that the upper middle class is now seriously under attack, and was citing example after example of the pressures, these new college fees of $52,000 to $62,000 a year for Tier 2 colleges are putting on the upper middle class to try and put 2 and 3 kids through college and having to do a master's degree. And it's just killing them. And not only that, they then can't get out. They can't get jobs. They're having to take no pay intern jobs to get employment. And I was in a conversation here just the other day where one of my friends who's in this situation said, Gord, he says, as bad as all that is, he says, my daughter's now 26 and she has no medical coverage, and I've got to pick that up because it's not under mine. So there's another $14,000 I have to ante. And I said, how are you going to retire? He says, I'm not. So it's a huge problem, and you're certainly well aware of it, and I think most of our listeners are, but we're doing nothing about it. But it certainly is helping the GDP. Ty, we're up against our hard line. We're up against our hard line here. Any closing comments you want to make here as we wrap this up?
No, other than this is not doom and gloom. It's just reality. You have to look at it. We're in a period where you have to hope for the best and plan for the worst. And actually, the opportunities are as great as the pitfalls. And it's just we need to. I believe that I'm a pamphleteer from the American Revolution, and my job is to go out there and, in simple terms, bring people insights that allow them to hopefully gather some freedom in their own lives, but to hold accountable the people that are preying upon them.
Ty, can you tell our listeners how they could learn more about your writings and your messages and the work that you do?
Well, you can go and see my work either on traderview.com or tedbits.com. I offer free subscriptions to enter the website and also get the newsletter. Been doing it for years. Do a lot of stuff with you, Gord, as you so generously mentioned. It's all through the Austrian lens and a historical lens, and it really is, I'll call it the no-spin zone. I spend a lot of time directly, undermining what people are told by the mainstream media, and I take pleasure in it.
I say to our listeners, Ty probably reads more than, I don't know, I can know very few people who read more than Ty, and knows what he's reading, and he posts what he thinks are the things you need to know on his website on a regular basis, on a daily basis, right, Ty? And so I encourage our listeners to check out tedbits.com and to get a sense of what he's spotting as in real time as the key issues to be watching. Ty, we're going to be back together here in a couple days with another one of your articles. You want to give us the name of your new article? Because I know as of today you're just releasing it.
Oh, it's on the policies of insolvency, and I'll call it a murder mystery. And it's we're really touching on some of the unfolding things that are going on in the United States and internationally. As you well know, Gord, we're in the midst of a maelstrom, and we're actually quite in the early innings. People think it's quite late. I disagree. I believe that as I'll call it the lies and prevarications become, more generally known, there's really been, Gord, as you know, this is a death spiral, and virtually none of the pain has been taken yet. Okay, I mean, forced liquidations, forced selling, the insolvencies being recognized, corruption at the official levels being unmasked. It's very early.
I agree, Ty, and what that means is there's opportunities for money to be made, wealth to be created, if you also clearly understand how you're going to protect it. Because there will be a market clearing event in this, what I call a fiat currency collapse, which is coming. But there's a period here of accelerating money printing that we're still very early in that cycle. And anyway, Ty, we need to break here, and I'm looking forward to your next article when we get back together. Talk to you again.
Thank you, Gord.
This has been Gordon T. Long, editor and publisher of GordonTLong.com. New recordings are posted regularly and can be found at GordonTLong.com. New show notifications are available through RSS feed, iTunes, and other social networking venues at GordonTLong.com.